I live on the fourth floor of a tired building, wedged between a discount grocery and a shuttered travel agency. It's the kind of street where the traffic never really stops, just thins to a whisper past midnight. I work late shifts at a print studio a few blocks away, and I like the walk home. It helps me think. I never thought the walk would become the part I fear. I don't use my name much outside of work. In the city, it feels safer to be one more face, one more coat, one more set of footsteps on old pavement. I know the rhythm of the streetlights. I know which tiles on the lobby floor bite your shoes. I know the busker who packs up around 11, and the food truck that leaves the corner smelling like onions. Routine makes a city feel tame. That's what I believed. It started on a Monday in early autumn, when the evening had that damp chill that catches in the throat. I left the studio a little after 10. My coworker offered me a ride, but I waved it off. I like to feel I still own at least one part of my day, even if it's the part that passes in the dark. Halfway home, I noticed a figure about half a block behind me, wearing a charcoal hoodie with the hood up. That's not unusual here. What made me notice was the pace. Not fast, not slow, just carefully matching mine. When I paused at a crosswalk, they paused. When I sped up, they did too. I told myself I was imagining it. I crossed on a red with no cars in sight. So did they. I tried a simple test. There's a deli on the corner with a bright doorway and a bored cashier who knows my face. I stepped in and pretended to check the gum. The hooded figure stopped outside and turned to look into the deli windows. Not at me, exactly. Just as if they were a puddle, reflecting the doorway, watching without watching. That was when a small, practical part of me said, "Okay, use the light. Use the presence. Don't drift back into the quiet street." I bought a bottle of water. I didn't need it. I waited until the figure moved on. They did, slowly. Down the block, then around the corner toward my building. That bothered me more than anything, like they already knew where I was headed. My building's front door sticks unless you lift as you pull. The buzzer panel is a museum of faded names. I slipped inside, more aware than usual of the echo. The lobby has this echo that turns every soft sound into something you can't place. My shoes on the tile sounded almost apologetic. I told myself the figure had kept walking. In the stairwell, I avoid the elevator. It jolts, it stalls, it steals phone signal. I put the water bottle under my arm and started up. On the second floor landing, I heard the front door downstairs open again. It wasn't loud, but the shape of it was unmistakable, like a breath being taken by the building. I froze. That creak belonged to the stairwell door. It always complains that way when someone pushes it with the flat of their hand. I stepped into the corner, out of sight of the stairwell window. I told myself it could be any neighbor coming home late. I counted footsteps. 1, 2, 3, then a pause. I waited for the next set of steps, but they didn't come. I considered going back down to the lobby and making a scene in front of the mailboxes. But a dull bravery made me keep going, slow, trying not to make that same creak on the third floor landing. I placed my weight near the hinge where it's quieter. I've lived here long enough to know the quirks. On the fourth floor, the hallway light near my door flickers like it's trying to say something and gives up. I reached into my pocket for my keys before I turned the corner, because I didn't want to stand at the door, fumbling. My plan was simple: unlock, in, lock. When I turned into the hallway, I noticed a small rectangle of white at my door. Not mail. It was cleaner than a flyer. It looked like a blank card, tilted under the threshold. No writing I could see. My stomach pulled tight in a way I don't trust. I kept my pace steady, keys ready. I reached the door. The card was a business card, thick, expensive paper, stark white, nothing printed on it. I picked it up, pretending it meant nothing. I unlocked the door and stepped in. My apartment is not much. A couch, a low table, a kitchen that tries to be a hallway. I locked the door behind me and stood there listening. The building hummed in its old way. Somewhere, someone's TV murmured. I put the white card on the table next to my keys and that bottle I didn't need. I checked the peephole. It's cloudy from age, makes faces into smudges, but the hallway seemed empty. I decided to shower. That was my first mistake. Not the shower, the decision to try to prove to myself that everything was normal. I'm careful in the bathroom. I keep a towel under the door because the fan rattles, and I don't like the sound. I took a quick shower, the kind where you measure time by the number of songs in your head. When I stepped out and put on a t-shirt, I noticed something off that I couldn't name. It wasn't a sound, it was the shape of the silence. In the living area, the lamp by the couch had been clicked one notch lower. I keep it on the second setting because the first is too dim to read labels, and the third makes the room feel like a stage. I could have bumped it earlier, I told myself. I could have, but I don't think I did. I went to the table, picked up the card again, turned it over, still blank. But my hands weren't. They smelled faintly like something chemical from the studio, like toner and cleaning solution, a reminder of my day and of how much I wanted to be clean of it. To reset my head, I decided to go back out, buy a snack, make a phone call on the walk. Stupid, maybe, but the idea of being in the room with that thin lamp glow made me feel watched, even if I wasn't. I stepped into the hall and locked the door. As the deadbolt slid, I heard it. A soft click in the stairwell, like someone trying a door handle 2 floors down. No voices, no footsteps yet. Just that testing sound, metal on metal, as if hands were mapping out which motions made noise. It happened again, this time my own floor, the handle of the storage closet near the stairwell. I stood still, keys pressed into my palm, trying not to breathe too loudly. The handle turned, then stopped, as if whoever was holding it remembered something and reconsidered. I didn't stay to find out. I went the other way, toward the elevator, even though I hate the elevator, and pushed the call button. The old machine grumbled awake. I prayed it would come fast. When the doors parted, I stepped in and hit the lobby button. The elevator dropped like it wanted to prove me right about not trusting it. It stopped at the second floor for no reason I could see, then continued. When it opened on the lobby, I almost ran. The overnight bodega is 2 doors down. I know the cashier there by face, not by name. Names are a luxury at that hour. I grabbed a sandwich I didn't want and stood near the counter, pretending to check my phone. The cashier watched me with that mix of concern and indifference that belongs to people who've seen a lot. I said, "Hey, did you see anyone hanging around the building?" He shrugged in the slow, heavy way people shrug when they won't gamble on details. "Hoodie?" he asked. I nodded. "Everyone's got a hoodie," he said, and rang up the sandwich. Fair point. I stayed in the store longer than I needed to until another customer came in, until the sense of being the only moving thing broke. When I walked back to my building, I looked at the windows, at the dark squares where people had already surrendered to sleep. On my floor, I told myself, there were 6 other apartments. 6 lives. Someone would hear if I needed help. I repeated that, as if it were a rule. I took the stairs this time because the elevator felt like a trap. On the second floor landing, I stopped. On the riser of the next step up, near the inside edge where few shoes land, there was another white card. Blank. I didn't touch it. I walked around it, stepping wide, as if a card could be a wire. On the third floor, there was a second card resting near the corner of the landing. Same heavy paper, same nothingness printed on it. I stared at it for a long time and told myself to breathe. Someone could have dropped a stack. That happens. But why one on each landing? Why that careful spacing like markers? I moved on. The fourth floor door was closed, and I knew exactly how it sounds when it opens. I tried to prepare my face to look bored if I saw anyone, the way the city teaches you. Practice looking like nothing interests you. It's a mask that sometimes helps. My door looked like my door, hook for my coat on the inside, a jacket I'd left earlier slumped over it. The small rug misaligned a little from when I came out. I put the key in and stopped. There was a new sound behind the door. Not movement exactly. A presence has a sound when you've lived in a space long enough. Sometimes it's the absence of a hum. Sometimes it's the weight of a pause. I know my apartment's pauses. This one felt borrowed. The footsteps were soft, careful, and close. They stopped right on the other side of the door. I kept the key in the lock. Whoever was inside now knew I was outside. A standoff made of wood and the thickness of my door. A thought flashed through me, bright and stupid. Just ring your own doorbell, make noise, pull a neighbor out. But there is something about certain kinds of fear that makes you go quiet instead of loud. I took the key back out, slow. The footsteps didn't move. I backed up down the hall. There's a fire exit at the far end that leads to a narrow service stair, the kind that smells like dust and old paint. I turned and walked that way, steady, like I'd forgotten something in the laundry room on 3. I kept my shoulders level. The trick to looking unafraid is to count and breathe in patterns. 4 steps, inhale. 4 steps, exhale. I didn't look back. The service stairwell door pushed open with a tired hiss. I slipped through and let it close, gently, quietly. I went down 1 flight to the 3rd floor, then stopped, crouched against the wall, and listened. The building made its usual sounds, nothing new. I felt the adrenaline rise only after I had somewhere to put it. I took out my phone and typed a message to my coworker. Weird night. Might crash on your couch? I didn't hit send. Something about committing to that felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I needed to know if my home was still mine or if I was abandoning it to someone I hadn't even seen. I decided to go to the lobby and talk to the super. He doesn't live on site, but his office has a camera pointed at the stairwell entrance and he sometimes works late. I opened the 3rd floor door and started toward the main stairs again, and that's when I saw it. The utility closet door stood ajar by an inch, and a slice of the dark interior looked too perfect, too still. The white card I had ignored on the landing was gone. I hadn't heard anyone pick it up. My mouth went dry, and it wasn't from the bodega sandwich I hadn't eaten. The bang came from above, my floor. Not crashed furniture, not a dropped pan. It sounded like someone misjudged a door frame with their shoulder, that kind of blunt mistake noise. I took a step back without meaning to. My phone vibrated in my hand with a calendar alert I had forgotten I set. The buzz almost knocked my heart out of me. I swiped it away and put the phone on silent. I made a plan. Cheap and quick. Leave the building now. Go to the all-night laundromat across the avenue. Sit among spinning machines and people who don't ask questions. Call the super from there. Plans like that are made of thin threads. But it was a plan. I reached the lobby and felt relief, like a wrong-sized coat I still pulled on. I crossed to the door and stopped. Another white card rested on the floor just before the threshold. I bent to pick it up, and this time there was writing. Tiny, pencil-gray letters near a corner. You left your light on. I stood with that card in my hand, the words small enough to deny if I wanted to. I stared at the door as if it could answer. Outside, the street was what it always is at that hour. A pair of cars at a light. A cyclist gliding past, like a rumor. A bus sighing. Normal. I stepped out and turned left toward the laundromat. The laundromat air is warm in a way that feels borrowed from daytime. There were 3 people there. A woman asleep in a chair with her arms folded. A guy scrolling through his phone with a bundle of shirts across his lap. And the attendant who watched the door like a guard dog too tired to bark. I sat in a corner where I could see the entrance and texted the super. Emergency? He wrote. I typed, someone might be in my apartment. 4th floor. Door locked but heard steps, he sent back. Stay put. I'm 10 minutes out. I let that message sit on my screen until it dimmed. 10 minutes is a strange amount of time when you think someone is in your home. It feels long enough for a lot to happen. It also feels like a dare. I must have looked like I was going to be sick because the attendant asked if I was okay. I said yes, because yes is easier than no. The seconds became a shape. At minute 6, a man in a charcoal hoodie walked by the laundromat windows. He didn't look in. He didn't need to. He crossed the street and disappeared into the shadow of the travel agency. I didn't move. I watched the door until the super arrived. A compact guy with a thick jacket and a keyring that looked like an instrument. We walked back together. He kept the conversation flat. People live easier if you give them lines to stand on. We'll check, he said. People get into places sometimes. They think something is theirs until someone tells them it isn't. At my door, he paused and listened. He did that for longer than I expected. Then he nodded once, like he'd found music under the surface. You stay behind me, he said. He put the key in the lock and turned it, quick. The room was empty. Or it arranged itself to look empty very quickly. That's the other thing I learned. Empty can be staged the way full can. The lamp was back on the 2nd setting. The white card on the table had moved half an inch closer to the couch. That could be nothing. The super checked the closets, the kitchen cabinets, behind the shower curtain. He moved like he had practiced it, but not like he liked it. Nothing, he said. He looked at me then, really looked, and added, Lock your windows. I know the latches stick. I'll fix them tomorrow. I wanted to say the windows are on the 4th floor and no one climbs up. I wanted to tell him I didn't like the way the word tomorrow hung between us like a curtain. Instead, I nodded and walked him out. He hovered long enough to make sure the door was secure, then left. His footsteps faded down the hall, then down the stairs, then into the building's hum. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with the lamp on the 2nd setting, the white card on the table, the bodega sandwich untouched. Around 3, the city outside softened into the part of night where the loudest sound is the occasional taxi. I must have drifted near sleep because when I heard the new sound, it took me a moment to name it. One single knock, loud, flat. Not the rhythm of a neighbor or the brittle tap of a delivery. A statement. I stood, heart loud, in the tiny room and went to the door. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't even look. I put my ear against the wood and heard nothing. The kind of nothing that waits. After a long minute, I slid the chain on and opened the door an inch. The hallway was empty. No footsteps, no doors closing, no whispered conversations of people who had just been brave. On the floor, where the cards had been before, was a small plastic key tag, the kind buildings use for the back gate. My building's tag is faded blue. This one was new, white, unmarked. I picked it up. It felt warm, maybe from a hand, maybe from the hallway air. I went back inside and locked the door, then locked it again, out of habit, then checked the chain, the bolt, the second lock that barely lines up unless you pull. I placed the tag next to the card. They looked like the beginning of a language that wanted to be learned. The next morning, I called in sick. I told my coworker a version of the truth that had edges sanded off. I told the super I'd appreciate the window latches being fixed sooner rather than later. He said he would. He didn't ask about the knock. Most people don't want to carry someone else's details, even when they might matter. Days turned into a pattern shaped like caution. I varied my route home. I used the elevator some nights just to deny the stairwell its power. I checked the peephole in a way that made me feel foolish. And still, sometimes a white card would be on the second floor landing when I came home late. Sometimes it would be on mine, never with writing again. Just there, like a presence that preferred to speak in blanks. The city specializes in teaching you to keep your head down, but there are lessons you cannot unlearn once you notice them. I now know the feeling of a room that has been entered and made to look untouched. I know the cadence of careful footsteps on old tile. I know the way a blank card on a landing can make the world tilt. I still live here. I still walk home late sometimes. I still pass the deli and the bodega and the shuttered travel agency. And I still like the first cold inhale of the night air when I step onto my block. But now I check the corners of the stair landings with my eyes before I place my feet. I listen for the pauses in the building's breath. And when I get to my door, I take the key out early, and I always look down before I look up. Because sometimes the thing that waits for you isn't in the room,